India and Pakistan, two countries, two flags, two governments. But look beyond the border. The food, languages, music, clothing, family traditions, and even many of the stories passed down by grandparents can feel surprisingly familiar. So here's the question. Are India and Pakistan actually the same? The answer is complicated. Because the two countries share an enormous amount of history, but they also developed very different political identities. And to understand why, we have to go back to a time when there wasn't an India and Pakistan as we know them today. For centuries, the Indian subcontinent was a connected historical region. Different empires and kingdoms ruled different parts of it. The Mauryas, Guptas, Delhi Sultanate, Mughals, Marathas, and countless regional powers. People didn't suddenly become Indian or Pakistani because of a modern border. Punjab, Bengal, Sindh, Kashmir, and other regions had their own identities, languages, and cultures. But they also interacted constantly. Trade connected them, migration connected them, and religion did not always create completely separate societies. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, and others lived alongside one another in many parts of the subcontinent. Then came British rule. By the 20th century, British India covered most of what is now India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And this is where the story became increasingly political. The biggest disagreement wasn't simply Hindus versus Muslims. The politics were much more complicated. A major question was, what would happen to Muslims in a future independent India where Hindus would form the majority? The All India Muslim League increasingly argued that Muslims were a distinct political community whose interests needed strong constitutional protection. In 1940, the Muslim League adopted the Lahore Resolution. It called for Muslim majority areas in northwestern and eastern India to be grouped into autonomous and sovereign political units. Muhammad Ali Jinnah eventually became the central political figure behind the demand for Pakistan. But here's something important. Not every Muslim supported partition, and not every Hindu or Sikh opposed it. On the Muslim League side, Muhammad Ali Jinnah and many League leaders increasingly supported a separate Muslim homeland. Their argument was that Muslims needed political security and could not simply rely on being a permanent minority in a centralized Indian state. But other leaders eventually accepted partition for different reasons. Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel were not originally campaigning for Pakistan. However, by 1947, Congress leadership accepted partition as the way to achieve independence amid a rapidly deteriorating political situation. Sikh political leaders, including Master Tara Singh, also became deeply concerned about the future of Sikhs in a Muslim-majority Punjab and eventually supported dividing Punjab. So partition wasn't simply one person deciding to draw a line. It was the result of years of political disagreements, competing fears, and negotiations. And by 1947, enormous communal violence had made the situation even more desperate. But here's the part that often gets left out. There were major figures who never wanted India to be divided. Mahatma Gandhi remained personally opposed to partition and continued advocating Hindu-Muslim unity. Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, one of the most prominent Muslim leaders in the Indian National Congress, also opposed the demand for Pakistan. And then there was Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, the famous Pashtun leader known as the Frontier Gandhi. He strongly opposed partition and felt betrayed when Congress ultimately accepted the plan. There were also nationalist Muslims and organizations that rejected the Muslim League's demand for a separate state. So the historical picture isn't Hindus wanted India, Muslims wanted Pakistan. Millions of people simply didn't fit into that formula. Then came 1947. The British Parliament passed the Indian Independence Act, creating two new dominions, India and Pakistan. Punjab and Bengal were divided, and suddenly, communities that had lived alongside one another for generations found themselves on different sides of an international border. Millions of people were displaced. Families left their homes. Trains carried refugees across the new border, and communal violence killed huge numbers of people. Partition wasn't simply a line drawn on a map. It transformed where millions of people lived, which country they belonged to, and how they understood their identity. Now let's return to the original question. Look at the culture. Indian and Pakistani cuisines share countless traditions. Biryani, paratha, kebabs, chai, sweets. Of course, both countries developed their own regional versions, but the overlap is undeniable. Then there's language. Hindi and Urdu have major differences in writing systems and vocabulary, especially at formal levels, but everyday spoken Hindi and Urdu can be remarkably mutually understandable. And then there's music. From classical traditions to Punjabi music, qawwali, ghazals, and film music, cultural influences have crossed today's border for generations. Punjab is perhaps one of the clearest examples. Before partition, Punjab was one historical region. After 1947, it was divided between two countries, and Bengal experienced something similar. The border separated communities that had shared centuries of history. However, saying India and Pakistan are the same would be misleading. Today they are separate sovereign states with different political systems, institutions, and national narratives. India became a secular democratic republic. Pakistan was created with a strong emphasis on providing political security and a homeland for Muslims, and its constitutional development eventually gave Islam a central role in the state. Their legal systems, political histories, and military experiences also developed differently. Their national identities evolved differently. And perhaps the biggest difference is how each country remembers partition itself. For many Indians, partition is remembered as the division of British India and the beginning of a long rivalry. For many Pakistanis, 1947 is remembered as the creation of their homeland after a long political struggle. Both perspectives exist, and both are connected to real historical experiences. And that's what makes India and Pakistan so fascinating. They are simultaneously very similar and very different. A person from Lahore may recognize a Delhi family's food. A Punjabi song can cross a border and still make sense. A grandmother's recipe may have existed before the country itself did. But that same person may grow up learning a completely different national history from someone on the other side. The border changed passports. It changed governments. It changed political identities. But it could not erase centuries of shared history overnight. So, are India and Pakistan actually the same? No, they are two independent countries with distinct identities. But are they completely different? Also, no. Perhaps the better way to describe them is this. India and Pakistan are two countries that emerged from the same historical landscape, carrying enormous pieces of a shared past into two different futures. And maybe that's the real legacy of partition. It didn't create two civilizations, it created two states out of a civilization that had already been deeply interconnected for centuries. Subscribe and like for more videos like this.